Chapter 22, Holding On. Yes, it's me, Alex. Hello, your favourite brother. Actually, I'm not in a very jokey mood at the moment. I'm not in a very smiley mood either. A woman, a stranger, threw a bucket of blood over me today. Turns out it was pig's blood. The police are still trying to find out where she got it from. But apparently she's not saying a word. She didn't have much to say to me either when she threw the bucket of blood all over me. She just kept on saying one word over and over. Murderer. She called me a murderer. I'm not a murderer. I'm just a boy, doing the best I can. I'm against animal experiments where it isn't necessary. And I think using animals to test cosmetics or perfume and that sort of stuff, it's obscene. But I read on the internet that there have been major medical advances that have depended on animal research, like anaesthetic and the diphtheria vaccine and drugs for asthma and blood pressure and heart transplants and insulin and treatments for leukemia and penicillin. Is all that wrong? I just don't know anymore. I don't know anything. I think of that woman and I can't even hate her. Maybe I will later. Maybe I'm still in shock. I don't know what I would have done if my friends hadn't been there, especially Marlon. We were having a great time, then it all got spoiled because of her, because of me. We've all been swimming. I used to be quite good at swimming before I caught the viral infection that started all of this. We played daredevil dive. That's where you have to dive to the bottom of the deep end, then come back up and race to the side. I didn't make it to the bottom. I ran out of breath. Marlon usually comes first when it comes to daredevil dive. But today, he came last. Do you know, I've only just realised why. I think he stayed back deliberately to keep an eye on me. I wonder why I didn't realise at the time. So, here I am, clean again. I swallowed some of the blood that woman threw at me. My mouth was open and it went in my mouth and down my throat. I was as sick as a pig afterwards. But how do I know that stuff is out of my stomach? The doctors tried to reassure me I'd only swallowed a minute quantity because I was sick immediately afterwards. It's unlikely any's left in my system. But how can they know for sure? I had a shower when I got home, a shower that lasted for an hour and a half. I let the water run into my mouth and down my throat. I don't think I should have done that. Shower water isn't the same as tap water, but I couldn't help it. I still had the taste, that foul stuff in my mouth. I've used up a brand new tube of toothpaste, brushing my teeth for half an hour. I'm clean, so why do I feel dirty? Why do I feel like I'm holding on by my fingertips? I asked Dad what had happened to the woman who threw the blood. He told me she'd been arrested. I can't help wondering where she got it from. Dad doesn't know. She wouldn't have killed the animal to throw it over me, would she? Anyway, Dad was all for going to the police station first thing in the morning to press assault charges. I must admit, I thought she'd have to have hit me with a bucket to be charged with something like that. But Dad says it still is assault. You should have seen Mum and Dad's face when I asked them not to press charges. Even now I don't know why I did it. Part of it is that I don't want any more fuss. I don't want a big drawn out case with my face in the paper every 2 seconds. But it was more than that. I want to prove to everyone and myself, I think, that I'm better than that. Not in a superior, stick my nose in the air kind of way, but I've forgiven her. So what's the point of prosecuting her? And I really have forgiven her, which I must admit I find astounding. But Nan was right. Life is too short to bear grudges. You must remember that. But Alex, I don't know what to do or where to go from here. All I do know is that I have to get fit and stay fit. I must. I have to show that woman and Mum and Dad, the whole wide world, that all this is for a reason, a good cause. Otherwise, it was all for nothing. And what's the point? You see, Alex, For the first time, I'm beginning to wonder if I made a mistake in going through with all of this. Do you think I made a mistake? I just don't know anymore. I don't know anything. It's all right. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. Chapter 23, A Favour. Marlon, can you do me a favour? What's that? 5 weeks had passed since the bucket of blood incident, and unfortunately, for a while, it had stirred up a lot of interest in me again. Now Mum insisted on driving me to and from school every day. And going to the leisure centre was out of the question. Mum and Dad wouldn't hear of it. I could still see Mum and Dad's faces when we got home that night. Mum ranted and raved and raged for a good hour, while Dad stood by the front window watching the crowd outside our house and silently seethed. Only Nan recognised how I felt. She understood why I wanted to go back to the leisure centre. She understood why I wanted to get things back to normal as soon as possible. But Mum and Dad wouldn't hear of it. And now that Nan had gone back to her own home, I had no one on my side. So the way I saw it, Mum and Dad left me with no choice. Thankfully, the second pig heart transplant had taken place at Dr. Bryce's clinic, so I was no longer the sole focus of attention. It made what I was doing easier. It was simple, really. I had some problems of my own to sort out. Marlon, can you cover for me again tonight? You're not going swimming again, are you? Marlon asked, upset. I could tell he wasn't happy with me for the position I was placing him in. Every day for the last week, I'd phone Mum to tell her I was going to his house after school. Then, after my swim, I'd go to his house for 10 minutes or so. Then, phone for Mum and Dad to come and pick me up. I knew sooner or later I would be found out. But with a little luck, it would be later. I had suddenly become obsessed with swimming. Well, not so much swimming as with daredevil diving. I still hadn't made it to the bottom of the pool, but I was going to. I was determined. I had no idea why it was so important to me, but it was. It was as if by touching the bottom of the pool, I was proving something to myself and the rest of the world. Only I had no idea what. Cam, you can't keep doing this. You can't go to the leisure centre every evening. Watch me, I said. But suppose someone sees you, Marlon said unhappily. So what? Besides, things are back to normal now. The crowds have gone from outside our house. Our phone's been plugged back in. Nan's gone home. Why should everything else be allowed to return to normal except my life? I argued. Going swimming after school every day isn't normal unless you're training for the Olympics, said Marlon. And you won't even let me come with you. You've got to stay at your house just in case my mum or dad phone. Sooner or later they're going to twig. Grown-ups are stupid, but they're not stupid all the time. I know, but I'll have finished by the time Mum and Dad catch me. Finished what? I didn't answer. So will you cover for me? You know I will, Marlon replied. Of course I know you will. I smiled at Marlon, because I know I can trust you. Marlon smiled at that, but the frown didn't take long to return to his face. Marlon and Cameron, would you like to stand up and share your conversation with the rest of the class? Asked Mr. Stewart. I'm sure we'd all be fascinated to hear what's so riveting that you have to speak while I'm trying to teach. I said the first thing that came into my head. I was asking Marlon if he'd written a poem for his English homework, and had he? No, sir. And have you? Yes, sir. Let's hear it then, said Mr. Stewart. I stared at him. It's not really finished yet. Doesn't matter. Let's hear it. It's not very good. Let's hear it. Sir, it's dire, I admitted. The rest of the class tittered at that. I'm even more intrigued now. Get it out. I scowled at him, but he wasn't going to change his mind. Reluctantly, I dug into my desk. I couldn't believe he was really going to make me read it out. I always knew he was a sadist, and here was my proof. Sorry, sir. I must have left it at home, I lied. No way was I going to read out my first attempt at my homework. It was a poem about a butterfly, for goodness sake. No way was I going to read out anything so weedy. That's a shame. I'll have to make sure I ask your English teacher to show me this amazing poem worthy of all that discussion just now, said Mr. Stewart. Sorry, sir. I mumbled. Mr. Stewart got on with the rest of the lesson. Me, I couldn't wait for the lesson to finish. I was desperate to leave and go swimming. Under the water, nothing and no one could touch me. Nothing could trouble me. Thank goodness this was the last lesson of the day. As soon as the buzzer went, I would make sure I was the first one out of the classroom. In fact, the others wouldn't be able to see me for dust. One of the advantages of having a new heart, even if it was from a pig, it made me healthy enough to get out of the class in a hurry. Take a deep breath, I told myself, and another and another. Now go. I struck out for the middle of the pool, kicked back with my legs and dived. Kick, kick, kick. Down, down, down. The water stung my eyes, and the further down I went, the more it felt as if giant hands were wrapped around my chest and squeezing. But I kept going. I could see the bottom, just a little further. But from the pounding of my heart and the raging of the blood in my head, I knew I'd have to turn back now, or I wouldn't be able to turn back at all. Cursing my weak body, I headed back up towards the surface of the water, desperately disappointed. Would I ever make it to the bottom? I was beginning to wonder. But I had a more immediate problem. The surface of the swimming pool looked as if it was miles away. I kicked harder, forcing myself to go faster. I broke through the surface of the water just as I thought my lungs must surely burst. I tried to float to my back, but my body was having spasms from trying to drink down the air in my starved lungs. I swallowed some water and started coughing and spluttering as I tried to clear my mouth. I twisted round, forcing myself to float, forcing my body to calm down. My heart, which had been racing so fast it seemed to consist of just one continuous beat, began to slow. But I had a pain in my left shoulder and the left side of my neck. I felt sick and my lungs were hurting, and the pain didn't ease as I began to breathe normally. I made my way to the side of the pool and hauled myself out. Even that was a major effort. I was so tired. I went back to the changing rooms, had a shower and decided to head straight home. By the time I'd put the front door key in the lock, the pain in my shoulder had passed, but I still felt a bit sick. I'd been feeling vaguely nauseous for a few days now, and it was getting worse, not better. As I closed the front door behind me, I could hear one of Mum's favourite Luther Vandross songs playing softly in the living room. I tiptoed to the living room door, which was open. I peeped through the crack between the door and the door frame. Mum was sitting on the sofa with her feet on Dad's lap, and Dad was massaging her toes again. That's very relaxing, Mum smiled at Dad. Alex has stopped kicking me and gone to sleep. She patted a bulging stomach. I can't believe I'm massaging your smelly toes again. You are such a smooth talker, said Dad. You could talk the man in the moon into giving you a green cheese sandwich. I don't want the man in the moon. I just want you, Mum smiled. What is it with you two and toes? I asked, going into the room. Mum frowned. What are you doing here? I thought you were Marlon's. I was. I decided to come home by myself. Mum swung her feet off Dad's lap. You came home by yourself? Her voice was sharp. Yes, I did. And nothing happened, I replied. Cameron! I could tell Mum was winding up for a mega rant. Kathy, you can't spend the rest of your life hovering over Cam like a hawk, Dad said gently. Sooner or later, he's got to start doing things for himself again. You can't do everything for him. I'm not trying to. It just... Dad smiled, and with that smile, Mum's voice trailed off. Are you okay? She asked me at last. I'm fine, I lied. My nausea hadn't passed, but I wasn't about to give Mum an excuse to smother me again. I wish Nan was here. I badly wanted to talk to her. Mum, I began. The doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said. No, Kathy, the crowds have gone, the police have gone, and most of the letters have stopped. We can't spend the rest of our time in this house hiding and living in fear. I saw Mum take a deep breath. I thought you were going to open the door, she snapped. I smiled. I knew the snap wasn't directed at me. Even if I lived to be 90, Mum would still be fussing over me. I went back into the hall, thinking how nice it was to walk into the house and not hear a major argument going on between Mum and Dad. Things seemed to be working out after all. I opened the front door. Dr. Bryce, I said, surprised. We only saw you a week ago. You're not due till after Christmas. I need to see you and your parents, Dr. Bryce told me, with no trace of a smile. One look at his face and I could see it was serious. Without a word, I stepped aside. Dr. Bryce came into the house and headed straight for the living room. I closed the door slowly behind him. I stood out in the hall for a few moments. I didn't want to go in the living room. I was afraid of what I would hear. Maybe if I stayed out of in the hall, then whatever it was wouldn't be about me and wouldn't affect me. But it didn't work that way. Whatever it was, it wouldn't go away just because I wanted to do my ostrich act and bury my head in the hall carpet. I walked into the living room. Mum and Dad were sitting on the sofa with Mum's feet now firmly on the ground. Dr. Bryce was in the armchair. They all watched me as I sat down next to Dad. I've got some bad news. Dr. Bryce didn't even attempt to beat about the bush. He turned and looked directly at me. To put it simply, Cameron, your white blood cell count is way up. My T cells and my B cells, I asked. Dr. Bryce was too worried to be impressed. How much do you know about the way your immune system and your white blood cell work? Only what we've done in biology and what I've read in books and over the internet, I admitted. Hang on, what exactly does this mean? Dad asked. A deep silence filled the room. It means, Dr. Bryce began, it means that maybe my body is starting to reject my new heart, I interrupted, never taking my eyes off the doctor. Not necessarily. It may just mean that we need to rethink the dosage and content of your anti-rejection immunosuppressant drugs. The trouble with all these drugs is that it's a fine balancing act between what and how much of each drug you should get. I thought you said you developed a new drug, a complement blocker that would stop Cameron's body rejecting his heart. Mum's expression was stony. We have. I hope we just need to amend his dosage. Cameron, I've brought you a new series of injections which I'd like you to start taking immediately. I'll take the old ones back with me. More injections, Mum said, dismayed. We've reached a deal with the pharmaceutical company only this week. They've agreed to start manufacturing the drug in a tablet form from the new year. We don't have the resources at my clinic to do that, so hopefully the injections won't be for much longer. Cameron, I also want to change the immunosuppressant tablets you're taking. I think we need to be more aggressive. Will all this work? I asked. It's impossible to tell. All we can do at this stage is monitor you closely and keep fine-tuning the dosages of the various drugs you need to stop your body rejecting a new heart. Dr. Bryce dug into his large briefcase and brought out a clear plastic box full of vials. We don't want your body to reject a new heart, but at the same time, we don't want to leave your immune system so weak that you couldn't fight off a cold if you caught one. I understand that. Pause and plays. I understand that. I nodded. How have you been feeling, Cameron? Have you been feeling more tired than normal? Maybe a bit ill? No. I shook my head. I've been feeling fine. Great, in fact. Dr. Bryce studied me. I think I should go back to seeing you weekly rather than monthly. But what about my fortnightly checkups at the local hospital? Do you still want me to go there as well? Yes, I think so. I'll speak to the hospital. I also want to change a few of the tests you regularly have. I shrugged. Okay, if you think I should. I do, Dr. Bryce replied. Well, I'd better go upstairs and get on with my homework, I said, jumping to my feet. No one told me to stay, so I didn't. I left the room and forced myself to run up the stairs, even though I was dog tired. When I got to my room, I chucked myself down on the bed, gasping for breath. My heart was pounding again. I told myself the stairs weren't responsible for my racing pulse. It was Dr. Bryce's news. But I knew that was only partly true. I thought of Alex downstairs waiting to be born, but the thought hurt. So I turned my thoughts to the swimming pool at my local leisure centre instead. I'll make you a deal, I spoke to my new heart. I'll play Daredevil Dive just one more time. If I manage to touch the bottom of the pool, then you have to stay inside me and not cause any more trouble. And you, I spoke to the rest of my body, And you have to leave my heart alone and let it get on with pumping my blood around my body. Okay, everyone? I'll try to touch the bottom of the pool just one more time. And if I manage it, then we all live together till I'm 90. Agreed? It was agreed. I'd go to the pool after school tomorrow. I was in control once again. Not my body, not my heart, but me. All I had to do was touch the bottom of the pool. My future was now back in my own hands.